Well, yeah, like you said, I did see this movie in theaters. Would this be a movie that if you made the trek to New Jersey or Connecticut would have been worth the time?
That's what we were talking about, right? Yeah. At first it was Connecticut because theaters weren't open by us, so it would have been a 7-hour trip. I don't think I would have minded. I think Teddy would have been frustrated, to say the least.
Yes.
He'd been like, Nolan movie? There's no Batman? 7 hours? You made me drive?
I feel the same way every time I go to the Meadowlands for a Jet game. I'm like, well, that was a waste of 8 hours.
Hey, Trevor Lawrence, man.
Don't do that. Don't give me hope.
Okay.
Don't try to understand it. Feel it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Nerd Soup. I am Beau Oliver, joined here today by Aaron, the Nerd Soup Monkey, and we are back to review Tenet, the new blockbuster movie by Christopher Nolan that may have killed movie theaters. But we are finally reviewing it because it is out on digital and Blu-ray, DVD, and 4K if you have a 4K TV. So Tenet. This has been, I wouldn't say it's a controversial film. Controversial because of all the pushbacks, but it's a very divisive film, I think, because of how complicated it can be at times. You had the privilege of being able to experience it in IMAX.
Yes.
So what did you think about Tenet? Were you a fan?
It's one of those rare movies where I can agree with both sides of the debate, whether it's a masterpiece or kind of sucks.
Why do we always have to be those people? Why can't we ever just plant our flag on the it's a masterpiece or it sucks? We always have to be the middlemen. I hate it. But I came into this wanting to love it or hate it, and I didn't love or hate it.
Yeah, well, it's something where
Same thing with Interstellar. Same exact thing.
So Nolan strives to do. He thrives off the chaos.
Yeah.
Some men just want to watch the world burn.
A lot of the things I love about this movie, it's kind of hard to describe how much I enjoyed some of these sequences, especially in the second half of the film when Nolan is really just showing how great of a filmmaker he is with a lot of I think the most breathtaking thing I'd say I've ever seen is that when he was able to take that airport scene from the first half of the movie and redo it in the second half from a different perspective in reverse. I was just pretty much everything going on in the second half where I wasn't really technically understanding everything, but just watching it play out on screen with the inverse and the regular, I just thought was absolutely incredible.
That's the problem with Tenet is that the moments of genius are sprinkled throughout. Visually, some of the things that happen in this movie, like you said, some of these action sequences, I can't piece them together, but I had such a fun time attempting to. And while I was watching it in the moment, like you said, when you realize that fight is going to go in the reverse direction, it's incredible. But the narrative is just too loose for me.
Yes.
And I think this movie would have benefited from another 30, 45 minutes, honestly, because it just moves at such a rapid pace. 2.5 hours. By the time we're in the third act, I look at my phone, I'm like, it's already been 2 hours?
It is a long movie, but it moves very quickly.
Yeah.
It moves right from scene to scene, and a lot of things get lost in some of these exposition dumps where there are a lot of important things that just kind of get glossed over that upon rewatch, you kind of need to maybe pause, rewind. Okay, let me put it all together. I couldn't really hear that because the sound design in this movie is a little off, so I got to kind of go back. And my first time watching it, I was constantly playing catch up where something would happen and it won't click for me until 10 minutes later. And then I'm like, oh, okay. But while I was thinking about that, now I have to play catch up on this thing that just happened here.
Right.
And a lot of these exposition dumps,
I think the best example of that is Neil's sacrifice in the end. It involves him picking a lock. And in passing, he mentions that when they're trying to rob the painting, the Goya painting, that he's very good at picking locks.
For me, it was like the first airport scene. I had no idea why they were in that airport.
Yeah.
So,
I came into this movie saying, don't be confused, just go with it.
Yes.
If you don't know what's going on, just still get the most out of it that you can. And this movie, it's a puzzle. It definitely warrants rewatches, and Nolan wants discussion about. And I think a lot of people can come up with their own interpretations, and that can get frustrating. But for the most part, I found it enjoyable while watching it, and I think maybe this is a problem. I've had more fun discussing it than watching it.
It's almost like Nolan made this movie in the inverse.
Right.
With him making it in the present day, because, and this is probably not true, but it seems like he just had this great idea for film technique, and then he went for well, now I need a story, now I need a narrative, I need characters,
yeah,
and kind of just put that in there. But
I wonder if the fast pacing takes away from the dialogue, if that just made it harder for him to write witty and snappy dialogue, because I thought some of the lines really fell flat.
Oh yeah, John David Washington with it took me an hour for hot sauce scene in the kitchen. But that kitchen scene was fucking awesome, and he was so goddamn cool in that scene.
He was beating the crap out of people.
Yes, and then another one when he's getting patted down, he's like, hey, you should buy me dinner first, or where I come from, they buy me dinner first.
The impact of the punches in that kitchen scene, that had to have been an answer to his critics over the fight scenes in The Dark Knight. They're too slow. They're not stylized enough. He said, okay, watch this. John David Washington as American James Bond, which I really enjoyed.
Cheese grater.
The first 30 or 20 or 30 minutes of this movie, I thought, how did anybody not like this? It's beautiful. It's got a cool score. John David Washington is as charismatic as ever. It starts to become harder and harder to follow. Still enjoyable.
See, I didn't like this initial setup at all. And it wasn't until it got crazier where I'm just like, I just sat back, stopped trying to think about it, and enjoyed what I was seeing on screen.
Right, and everything, the rules of this movie, when you realize that it is just kind of one big loop, the beginning can be seen as just another part of the loop, maybe the beginning or just the middle of the loop. I did appreciate the rules of this movie, the inversion of the entropy of an object or a person. See, when you look back at a movie like Inception, it's more like kind of magic and fantasy more than it is sci-fi. They really rooted it in a hard sci-fi set of rules, which at times were very difficult to follow, but visually, I've never seen anything like it. And that's why you have to give credit to this man, because he's doing things that I would never think of, nor have ever seen.
So I watched the movie twice, and I read the plot on Wikipedia again, just to like...
Yeah, I mean, the amount of Reddit posts that I've read in the last 72 hours.
When you read it, like a full breakdown of what happens, it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
I kind of followed it better than what I was showing on the screen. And, that could just be me not being as smart as other people, or it could just be this was a story that is very difficult to show. And I think Nolan struggled a little bit.
Yes.
In a lot of these areas.
And I think it's simultaneously hard to follow, yet also predictable, because there were things about the narrative that I just knew. When I saw the man in the beginning with the locket on his backpack, I thought, that's him. And it wasn't him. It ended up being Neil. But every time they came from the future, I was like, that's got to be them. The two men in the turnstile, that's the protagonist. The driverless car, that's also the protagonist. And nearing the end, I'm like, this guy has something to do with Tenet in the future, or he created Tenet. Those things were easy to pick up on. I just didn't understand how the fuck they were getting to some of these plot points. And a lot of the story, a lot of the future, the time travel revolves around the character of Sator, played by Kenneth Branagh. And he's awful.
I didn't mind him.
Then we take your bows and we stuff them in the cut, lock the windpipe.
Complex.
Like I said, if you're following the Nerd Soup canon in my Mank review, which I guess is either a prequel or a sequel, depending on when these come out.
Right.
These reviews come out. But in the Nerd Soup show itself, I said that I'm terrible at picking up accents. So I never know what a bad accent is or what it's supposed to sound like. So to me, he was just angry Russian bad guy.
See, angry Russian bad guy, you think it has to be intentional. It's going to be an homage to the James Bond villains. But he's so goofy. He's so unintimidating. He's delivering these lines with so much contrived emotion. I think he's terrible. At times, he just takes me out of the movie completely when he's on screen. And just give me a real character, someone that you can try and understand. Get a real Russian actor, or just let Kenneth Branagh be Kenneth Branagh. Change the origins of the character. I think it makes the movie better if you have a stronger, formidable villain who actually feels like a threat. If he was a character that you could relate to, but he was such a cliche, and the toxic relationship between him and the character played by Elizabeth Debicki.
Yes.
Fine actress, but also wasted in this movie. Nolan does, whenever he makes a sci-fi movie, he always has a theoretical physicist on set to advise him. I think he just needs like a woman on set to advise him as well.
It's weird because the standout characters were Neil and the protagonist, and I think John David Washington and Robert Pattinson played them very well, respectively. But those characters don't really get too much development. And I think for them, it's just they're thrown into the situation and you kind of see how they take on this mission. With Debicki's character, she got the most. There was the most attempt to develop this character. And when that character is not great, then it's like, how do you mess that up when this was the only character you actually tried to develop? And there's this one line in the movie when Pattinson's describing what will happen if Kenneth Branagh gets the algorithm.
Can you be a little more precise?
Everyone and everything that's ever lived, destroyed instantly. Precise enough?
It's like all life will cease to exist. And she goes,
Including my son.
it's like, yeah.
Yep, she cares
Including
about her
her son.
Yep, she
Yep. She's
she
a
has
mom.
motivations.
Yeah.
She has feelings.
And especially
There are
that
consequences
first
here.
dinner scene when they meet. And I get there's a lot to get in. There's only a finite amount of time for this film. So, right in that first meeting, we get her whole life story to this stranger she just met who wants to sell her a painting.
Right, and when you fail to develop your characters, I wouldn't necessarily call this movie soulless, but at times it does feel empty in favor of your really cool and interesting narrative.
but-
If that narrative is not...
But you don't have to necessarily. In Dunkirk, there was just the same kind of thing where we
Right, but
meet
there
these
was-
characters, we're thrown into this world, and we see them try to do what they got to do.
But Dunkirk is very simple.
Yes.
It's World War II. We're already on the side of the protagonists. I mean, unless...
But I think...
With this, what is he trying to say? What are we rooting for in this situation? I guess it's you don't want the world to be destroyed, right? And once again, that's...
But that's okay if you don't, I feel like sometimes some movies can lend to you don't really have to super develop your characters.
I don't need super development. I just need a couple building blocks here. I need something.
Well, I think what you said, what this movie's about, and I don't know,
what is he trying
I
to
don't know-
say here? I don't know how this time travel affects these characters personally, rather than just existential threat.
there was an avenue to kind of develop and expand upon a theme that they just kind of said in passing. It was that why this is happening is because people in the future, we fucked up the environment so bad for them that they're to the point where they're literally raging war on the past.
Right.
With Kenneth Branagh as an intermediary. So
Cold War, cold as ice.
we've seen obviously themes of climate change and things of that nature
Nuclear destruction.
have been told to a almost
Interstellar?
exhausting extent.
Is this connected to Interstellar? Because it might be the same plot.
So I'm not saying they had to go that route, but they introduced something that could be developed as a overarching theme, and they kind of just threw it away after that line.
Do you think this works better as a miniseries?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes. That's when you said it could be a half hour longer. I'm like, it could be 10 episodes
Well,
longer.
that's why with Nolan, we talked about in the Mank review, and like you said, don't know if it's a prequel or a sequel. Orson Welles, one of the original auteurists, and that's what Nolan has become to a blockbuster extent, that he has studios giving him $200 million saying, do whatever you want. And that's why I root for him, because he is trying to do something new with every movie that comes out, and at times he is a bit sloppy with the way that he tells these films. It's just such an engaging and unique way to tell a story, and a new way to tell a story.
Yeah, well, that's
But there are some things like the score. I think the score is somehow longer than the movie. I don't know if that's even possible. It just kept playing for an extra 20 minutes. You don't need the music to emotionally manipulate your audience the entire film. This score doesn't stop. And Ludwig Göransson, one of film Twitter's favorite composers, great score. I would love to listen to it while working out, but not while watching this movie. I mean, at times it fits, but it's just incessant. It doesn't stop. Doesn't stop.
Yeah.
And I already can't think.
Well, the movie doesn't stop.
No, it doesn't stop.
So-
This is the best argument for closed captions on every movie ever.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, can nobody hear this? No, it's the audience who's wrong.
But it kind of feels like I'm bashing on it, and I did really like this movie. I gave it a score in the 8s. But like I said in the beginning, it's hard for me to describe the extent of which I enjoyed some of these action sequences and some of the film techniques used in this movie. I was absolutely enthralled.
Yeah, I mean,
for whenever that second half hits, there's a moment, I can't really pinpoint it, but where I was just like, this is fucking cool.
you know who comes in and just absolutely steals the show?
Aaron Taylor Johnson?
Yep, Aaron Taylor Johnson, man. I was thinking, man, they should have just had a little triumvirate here with the three of them working in tandem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is awesome in this movie.
I would challenge any physicist not to explain it to me, but to explain it and for me to understand it. We should have said that at the beginning of this review. We are so unqualified to review this movie.
Anything involving time and anything, it's
The temporal pincer movement.
Okay.
Just saying it makes my brain hurt.
I do not do well with time paradoxes, the grandfather paradox. Any of that goes over my head. And when I do kind of understand it, I dig myself into a deeper hole, and then I just don't understand it anymore. It's kind of like if you want to play Occam's Razor with these sort of things, like the simplest explanation I can give myself, I'm going to go with.
Right.
I think that would help me and my sleepless nights.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Well, that does it for the review portion of the video, but now Aaron will go into some explanations on some of the more complex and mind-bending aspects of this movie, the physics, inversion, temporal pincer movements, paradoxes. Aaron, the floor is yours. Well, would you look at that? It's finally over. Hey guys, Beau Oliver here for one final send-off. Now, before I beg you guys to like and share this video, I'd like to thank our very special Patreon pledgers. We are very proud of the community we've been able to build here at NerdSoup, and it would not have been possible without our Patreon supporters. You guys are the true MVPs of this channel. Everything I've said, you keep the fridge full, you keep the lights on. There aren't enough words to thank you guys, but we'll do it anyway. Thank you. And we have a few videos coming up that have been suggested to us by Patreon pledgers. My Hero Academia, Neon Genesis Evangelion, and Full Metal Alchemist will be reviewed by Marissa, and yours truly, and Castlevania, which will be reviewed by Marissa and Aaron. And if you'd like to consider donating to our Patreon page, you can visit patreon.com/nerdsoup and check out some of the rewards we offer to our listeners. And really, we'd like to thank everyone who takes the time out of their day to watch our videos. Patreon pledger or not, your support is what keeps us motivated to keep giving the world our opinions on movies and TV shows and video games and pop culture, even though no one asked for it. We're still here, we're still yapping, and we hope you continue to join us. I'm Beau Oliver, and I support this message.